Welcome back to the lab. It's Friday and everything's going wrong. You get that? Well, it's not wrong as such, but I was looking at this fuel system, trying to figure out what I'm going to do there, and I don't know. We'll deal with that later, perhaps. I've got distracted again. No. Glenn being distracted and wandering off doing other things? Never. So I looked at this brace, chassis brace, we'll call it, strut tower brace / bonnet latch mounting contraption. And I was like, I picked that up to move it out of the way, and it's like, this is actually quite heavy and a little bit ugly. There's some things on here that are, I mean, most of it's pretty good. It's not terrible looking, but perhaps a little bit subpar. If we look at that, that's not bad. It's not the prettiest welding in the world. If we look at that, that is absolutely disgusting and looks like someone who was very unwelded that and tried to tidy it up later, which is exactly what happened. Anyway, this big beastie weighs, have a guess, I'll give you 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1. This thing weighs 2.7 kgs, which is not a lot. It's not light either, it's a bit. So we went rummaging. This is my Friday, everything goes wrong. I don't have much in the way of stock, you've just caught a glimpse of where we're heading in. But found this. I was like, and that was in the rack next to this other one here, and they looked about the same. And I was like, okay, so that's enough material to make a one of those. So this is 35 OD aluminium tube, and that's 25. So we're 10 mils bigger diameter. About the same wall thickness, heck of a lot stiffer, if I'm honest, than that. Try and bend this with your hands compared to bending that. This is probably better for what it's actually doing in the car. Now, this length that we've got here, which is a bit short of one, it's not quite half, is it? Because there's other bits and pieces, but let's call it half of that frame. This weighs 400 grams. So I was like, okay, it'd be better if it was closer to 30 mils, I reckon, because it's just 5 mils bigger than what's in there before. Probably be quite good. We'll get it anodized black when I'm done with it, or powder coated or something, so it looks more or less the same as what was in there, but lighter and stiffer. And so I went over the rack and picked up this, walked back over here and put the two side by side and went, hang on a minute. And then I got out the little calipers, put them on here. Oh, what do you know? It is 32. There enough. 31.8. Much closer to the size that I actually wanted. So I haven't put that on here. That'll be quite difficult to do. Quite a long length of. Oh, why not? It's Friday. Let's do it. This could be the end of the scales. Right, they're ready. Let's see if we break them, eh? I'm going to have to hold this pipe very carefully. Smash. Even if we use this entire length of tube, we've got 1.1 kgs, and that puppy's got to be 3 meters long at least. 2.7 for that much. Let's take a stab in the dark. Let's write it down. Lost my pen. Let's write it down. Do the job. And see how I reckon we're going to lose 1.5 kgs. That's my guess. That's my goal for this morning. Turn that into that to go into there and lose 1.5 kgs of weight and some ugliness. I'm sure a blind spot won't mind. Great song this. First things first, got the hole saw for the notcher, 32 mil, yep, and the teeth are looking good, so don't lose or break that, Glenn. We're going to need some short lengths of pipe for the ends. These ones are 45. We've got a slightly bigger diameter pipe. Let's go with 60. We can trim those if we need to later. I'm going to use goatee looking pipe that's been sitting in the workshop for I don't know how long I've had this, so I don't want to go too fast with that hanging out the end of it, we might beat up my poor little whiteboard. Right, so amazing. Get this clean. Oh, look at that. Looks like a brand new piece of pipe. You have to clean the oxide off the outside of the aluminium before you weld it anyway. The oxide's very hard, higher melting temp, basically makes welding an absolute pain in the ass. Fail! 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 There's a lesson in harmonics. So it was pretty good to start off with. Once the harmonics built up. Oh, yeah. I think we scratched it. It's good. A little bit of polish should be right. So there's drive shaft harmonics working play for you right there. You saw that, it was good, and then once it started to work on itself, it just manifests and away it goes. But anyway, we've got this nice and clean. Now I'm going to part this off way out here, because what will happen is this tool will grab, it will bend the tube here, and then that will flail around and it will smash everything to bits. So I'm going to part off whatever what we say it was, 60 plus a little bit here plus the width of the tool. So I'm going to part off, say, 270 here, and then I'm going to part off our 60 60 60. Put those on the bench. We need to weld on some washers on the end there to go. Someone put a bloody cover on the car to go onto these areas here, which I will replace these rib nuts with a Welding flat washer. Ta-da! 4 of those. All the same. Nobody died, so it's good. All been deburred with a fancy little deburring tool. You put that in the end there. Well, they're not fancy to anyone in the industry if you don't know about them. You run that around there like that, and that focus, that blade there, takes away yuckiness, roughness. Right, so now I've got to polish. Where's it gone? That big length there. Enough to do that and that, and these couple of bits there. I'm assuming we've still got enough material. Probably. Looks like it. Scrap aluminium bits from doing holes, from hole saw cutting. Like these ones. I keep these because they are so handy for doing things like this. So these need to go through a beautification program in the lathe just to make that square to that, or concentric. There's no real reason other than I want to. They're pretty close. Things do move when you're just welding them on the bench. Like I literally just sat the tube on there and went in exactly that spot there, actually. Yep, they look better. Quick little tidy up in the lathe. Oh, I mean, it's not the world's best welding. Again, never claimed to be. You can see I did it in stages around there. It doesn't. By the time you put that in the car and stand that far away, it's going to be awesome. Right, so next thing really is to bolt those into the car and notch these. And this is the part where it can all go wrong, because if I get this wrong, there is no more tube. That's it. That's the extent of our supply, which is conveniently just enough to do those 2 pieces there for our bonnet stays. Actually, a little bit of room for error there. We can get one or two of those wrong. All right, bolt time. So speaking of confirming angles, here's our original work of art that did fit in the car quite nicely. So we can set this up in the machine and give us a good guide as to what our actual angle is there. You can see that lines up there quite nicely. That's been set, so in theory we can notch one of these tubes, which will be this main one here that's not got the notch out of the center, and the top passenger side one should line up. Doesn't look right, does it? But never mind, it should work fine. This could be quite loud. This is how this machine works, guys. Ah. There we go. One relatively successful pipe notch. Just took this bottom one out of the way. As you can see, we're covering the general area where we need to be. It's about right. I'm not going to say it's in the perfect spot. It's about right. And that notch is looking absolutely perfect as it moves down. So we'll put this quite close to the base for obvious reasons. More stronger down there. The higher up you come up here, the more leverage this has on this point down at the bottom here. So if we put this right up here, it's just going to push and twist and bend at the bottom there. So that I'm going to bravely weld onto there right at the bottom there and see where we end up. It's alright. It's actually not the easiest thing in the world to do, in my opinion anyway. Not something I do frequently, but I enjoy practicing doing things like this, so on my own stuff. So then when I come to do your stuff, I can do a better job. And that is pretty much as good as anybody's going to do, realistically. Like, you could spend a lot more time on that and get it looking like a work of art, but it just needs to do a job, right? Successfully, and that will do that job. So let's get the other one welded onto the other tube and proceed to the part where we try and cross the two tubes from there to there. It can all go horribly wrong at that point. That's got to be really, really accurate, as per what you saw there. A slight error turns into a mess. That's the main part, bolts in. Even did it the same way around as that one. See, that's the top passenger side, goes right through. The other one's got the join. That's that one, goes right through. The other one will have the join. All the welds came out. Bloody beautiful, mate. What's this? Leaving your tools behind in the car. Shibbers. Trying to save weight, leaving things behind. Quite a rigid bit of pipe. Takes quite a bit of effort to move that. Stoked. Happy. So, next bit. We've already got this bit here. That has to come off. It's already attached to a bit of pipe. We've got a join here. And we've got to do that one down there. I'm picking that's a different angle to what that one is, because if you have a look at these chassis rails, look at the width of this one, look at the width of that one. That one's narrower. That's going to be a different angle, I reckon. Yeah, something to do with fitting the engine in the car. One rail's narrower than the other, whatever. Of course, the engine's not in there anymore. Lunchtime, come back, get on with it. This next bit of tube here, the other bit, turns out that notch was the same angle, or near enough to. Is it really? No, I'm not really happy with that. It's very, very close, but it's not quite right. So just Yeah, see, she's too high by the time you give some weight on it. So that needs a slight adjustment. And I'm going to leave that one really long. And the reason for that is we're going to chop a big hole out of it in the middle. So I want to have enough room that I can leave it long and then gradually work my way in and make sure we get this notch in the middle here just exactly right. Otherwise, we end up with that. All right, the longer one's in there. Longer, see, is the one we're going to chop out a bit from the middle. So it's bolted down there onto the chassis where it goes. It's squared up, sitting directly over the top of where it's going to be at this end, but not bolted down because it's too long. String, yep, string around the bolt. String around the bolt, bearing in mind it goes over the top. This is an exaggerated view. It goes over the top of the tube. I'll put it underneath actually. Let's slip it underneath and then it won't have this issue. But if you pull it tight, it will slide down the tube because the angles of the dangles won't be the same in every situation, but in this particular job, that's what it's doing. So you can see that I'm holding that directly above the bolt, and that's there. If I pull that down, and then you get all your tubes in the wrong spot. Bum, bum, bum. Right, so yeah, I'll put it underneath. See if it's any better that way. Mark the tube, cut it on the long side, figure out the angle for the notcher over there on the bench, notch it on the long side of where it needs to be, and then try it up against the other tube. Rinse and repeat until we get it exactly right. Done. Well, notched, not welded. And we all know it's going to move when I weld it. That's just what happens. I'm going to take the fuel tank out first. It's been empty for a very long time. It does have foam in it. And there is a port right there where I'm welding. I don't really feel like sending myself through the stratosphere today. So that took about 50 million cuts on those and a couple of adjustments here, there and everywhere. But they are literally just sitting there just based on the screws and the ends. And we're good. I've put a straight edge on this. It may not look perfect on camera. It is as perfect can be in person. She's pretty good. She's pretty straight. Looks straight from there, right? Which should do. Looks straight to me on this screen. And it looks straight in person. That's all that counts. So I'll get that welded up, which is going to have to be done in the car, or it'll just move too far and it'll be wrong. So we can do everything we can from this side in the car, take it out, weld up the rest. Cool. It's not the best looking welding in the world, but it's not a disaster. Bit hard to do this stuff while it was up in the car. I haven't gone over it again on the bench. Probably could and tidy it up and make it look better. All the rest of it's all really kosher. Beautiful. I can trim 10, 15 off the top of those. What are we going to call those? The tubes at the end. Take 10, 15 off the top of all those. There's a few grams to be had there. What we need to do at this point in time is make sure the bonnet still fits. Because this is all just a little bit higher than what it was before. Because that was all quite thin. It's possible my waterfall style vent that I've got on the bonnet will not fit on there anymore, and that will require some tweaking. We need the bonnet on anyway, and probably, to be honest, going to have to take the radiators out and all that sort of carry on, so that we can weld on those whatever those are called, so we can weld those on, or something similar too. It may be a attachment onto here and down onto there that unbolts or something like that to make it stronger or better or whatever. So figure that out, but I'm pretty happy with that. That's really good. It's a heck of a lot lighter than that. You can feel it. I'm just picking it up. It's like, wow, that weighs basically nothing. Whereas you pick up that one, you're like, okay, that's heavy. Yep, so more race car. Right, let's see if the bonnet fits. Now, before anyone asks, I know what you're thinking. Why is the bonnet crooked? Definitely is, isn't it? does not line up with the front of the car at all. Well, I mean, at all's a big thing. It's probably out 5mm. And what is out is not the bonnet. It's all the panels on the car and the headlights and all the stuff and things. The actual bonnet itself, that lines up with the hinges nicely and everything, and measuring from that corner there to a known point, on the roof and across to the other side and vice versa. The bonnet's actually square to the car. The front panels and everything are not square to the car, so we'll fix that. I mean, obviously everything's a bit flimsy at the moment anyway, right? So I'll give that a bit of a kick with my foot. Everything moves around. So we needed to check that, because there's no sense in putting mounts onto our fancy new frame that we've just made here and aligning them with the bonnet if the bonnet is not straight. The bonnet is straight, so we're all good. End of the day. Got it done though. So scales aren't on. Let's turn those puppies on. I reckoned it was going to be 1.5 kgs lighter, so we need to see this at 1.2 kgs. 1.211. Rightio, we're going to make sure this isn't sitting on the bench anywhere. We're clear there, we're clear everywhere. Boom. That's not a setup. Impressed. Good. I'm happy. Okay, so now I just need to put it back in the car, set the heights of those, maybe give them a tweak if they're not quite lined up perfectly. I'm sure they've moved when I've welded all this at the bottom here. It's quite likely. And good result for the day. Now, apples with apples, I know I don't have the brake master cylinder brace on this, and it was on this. I will be adding some structure to the actual car itself rather than on that brace to take care of that. So yeah, we're going to gain a little bit, but not as much as 1.5 kgs. I even gave the bonnet a wipe. Cool. So that one works. There's usually one that's a bit tight. Might be that one. Yeah, there you go. Jiggle, jiggle. Ta-da! So, that'll do. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Some of you guys probably haven't got that clicked. A couple of you have found out later on. I've mentioned that, and you've looked at it and gone, oh, look at that. Clicked it. Done deal. We need that. We need those views to come up. You need to pump those numbers up so we can entice more sponsors and earn more dollars. More dollars equals more playing with this. More cool things for you guys to watch. All right. Have a good weekend. Cheers, boy.